Back on the MSG 150 at Home, presented by Chase, Bill Pito, John Wallace, and Alan Hahn. And it's great to say hello to ESPN college basketball analyst and former college basketball coach, Seth Greenberg. Coach, it's great to have you on. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. I mean, first of all, you guys got to understand, I am a huge Knicks fan, grew up a Knicks fan, was in the Garden when Willis came out of the tunnel, last row at the top of the Garden with my bar mitzvah present. Madison Square Garden. I went to the old Garden. My dad played at LIU for Claire B in way back in the day in the old Garden. So MSG is pretty special to me.
Well, it's great to have you on. And before we start, if you can pass along some defensive principles to John Wallace, you know, it's never too late.
Hey, he had his hands up as long as when he was at a forward spot, he came up high and pushed it out a little bit and then backed up and got to the corner. He was fine.
My job was to put the ball in the hole, and that's what I did at a very proficient rate. That was my job.
So, Coach, obviously the basketball calendar has been turned upside down by COVID-19. The draft lottery is set for August, with the NBA draft set for October, and a tentative restart to the next season, potentially December the 1st. What does all this mean for players and teams?
Well, I'll tell you, it really means for players and teams, not only in the NBA, but in college, because you've got guys trying to decide whether they're going to keep their name in the draft still. I mean, think about this. It's the end of July, and they're still in the decision-making process if they're going to keep their team in the draft. So if you're a college coach, you don't even know your roster right now. You're trying to figure out who is actually going to stay in the draft and who's not. And let's face it, the NBA teams, they haven't had really an opportunity to interview in terms of one-on-one interviews. They've done Zoom calls and with 1,000 guys, quite honestly. They haven't had a chance to have any individual workouts, see how guys kind of process stuff. It's going to be a really interesting time because these next 3 months, you're talking about the teams that are in the bubble. What about the teams that are not in the bubble? And the void that they have in terms of their player development, their team development, looking at the younger players, and then rebooting the season come December, hopefully. I think it's really going to be interesting to see what happens because you're going to get a lot of basketball in a short period of time. You're going to have to unplug, reboot, and then also reinvent your teams in December because you really don't know what you're getting in terms of A, free agency, and B, the draft.
This is the longest pre-draft process in the history of the NBA, I would imagine, right? You have plenty of time to look at film, but it's film that's going to get older and older because these guys that are in the draft are certainly not going to be playing in any type of competitive atmosphere until they are drafted. So you have that aspect. And then on top of it, as you said, you get drafted 2 weeks later, you're in a training camp right away. There's no summer league. There's no time to prepare. So let's expand on that a little bit, if you can, Coach, about what kind of impact that could have on this year's draft class.
This year's draft class is really interesting because there is some depth to the draft, but it's a big question mark in a lot of ways, because if you look at the best players in this year's draft, a lot of people think Anthony Edwards, the kid from Georgia, is maybe a top 2, 3, 1, somewhere in the top 5 or 6. Now, look, he's got voids in his game. I mean, he's not Donovan Mitchell. He's a big physical kid. He's extremely athletic, shot a low clip from the 3, not a really, really good feel for the game, more athlete than player. Yeah, people are talking about him being maybe the number 1 pick. You talk about the Wiseman kid at Memphis, who I think is really an interesting prospect. Because of his size, his length, his positionless feel. But there's an if in terms of will he bring it every single night. You talk about LaMelo Ball, who's not the kid who was kind of a undisciplined in an environment he was raised in. Let's face it. I mean, we're all products of how the environment we're raised in, and he was raised in a basically 100% social media environment that his dad created through the Facebook Live. And he's done a great job of marketing his kids, but he's a really talented kid, but there's always an if, because is he going to be a winning player? Like, he has incredible vision and great feel and legitimate size, but is he going to be a winning player? Who is he going to guard? Does he understand what a good shot is and a bad shot is? So there's an if for every single guy coming into the league. The draft has decent depth, but to me, player development is so important. Understanding the NBA concepts is so important. Understanding the NBA games, getting summer league, even though you're playing against a bunch of dudes that will not be in the league. I love when guys go to summer league and someone puts up big numbers and go, oh man, he killed summer league. He's playing against a bunch of dudes that are not going to play in the NBA. I could put up some numbers in summer league like a hot one day. John could make a comeback and get 40 in a game. I mean, that's just the way it is. So we all overreact to that. But being in training camp, skill development, strength and conditioning, programming yourself to understand what it takes for the grind of the NBA. The one thing that's the most underrated thing about the NBA, and I'm sure John will agree with this, good NBA players have PhDs in basketball. They are so smart. They have the ability to cite stuff and visualize stuff and take a scouting report and execute it, take a new set and execute it, understand spacing, understand reads. The most underappreciated part of the NBA is how smart the NBA players are. Here, I got a question for you guys. Well, why is the NBA so adverse to when a guy's a junior or senior thinking that, oh my God, can't draft that guy. He's 22 years old. We'll draft a 22-year-old European guy.
It's such a great point.
Look at the 22-year-olds, whether it's Brogdon or Josh Hart or I can go through a whole litany of guys.
Fred VanVleet,
winning
is a
players.
great example, right, Coach? Fred VanVleet is a great example of somebody like that who was ready for the league, didn't even get drafted. Why? Too old. Well, too old. Like, he's a good player. Like, I've never understood that. That has become a thing. I'd rather take an unproven 19-year-old who's raw with a lot of issues, put him in a league with grown men where he's not going to get a lot of time to develop. And as a first-round pick, even in a top 10, can't put him in the G League. No, can't do that because then it's bad for the image of taking him in the top 10. Well, then what does he become? But I'm going to pass on a guy who's 22 and has played 3 years, or 21 who's played 3 years of college basketball, more polished, more mature, probably ready to plug and play. I'm going to do that. There are some franchises that don't do that, and that's like the Raptors, who have figured it out. There's other teams that I'm with you on that. I never understood that mentality, and now I'll throw it back to you then, Coach. How does that mentality change, and will it ever?
Well, it changes if you're a smart GM. Well, first of all, I think we get seduced by potential.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Hubie Brown used to have a saying, the dogs bark and the caravan moves on. I mean, like, here's the deal. You need dudes that just have proven they can win. Now, look, you need talented players. I mean, like, that's the one thing that look, you need talent. But to demean a guy because he's 22 years old is almost like ridiculous. I got more phone calls on Malcolm Brogdon from all over the NBA. And the first thing is, well, Brogdon, he's a step slow. I said, well, then why doesn't anyone go by him? And he goes by his man. Well, Brogdon, he really can't shoot it. Well, no, he shot almost like 40% from the three-point line. Well, we're moving it out a bit. He can lead. He's tough. He guards anyone. He wins. Yeah. I got every positive thing I said. I spoke to 10 NBA guys. They hit me with something else. But yet these same guys, sometimes they'll go to the old combine, all right, and watch a guy one time for 2 days, all right, and we all know the guy can't play. He had a season of stuff where he was not a very good player. He has a good combine, and you know what happens? He moves up in the draft.
Yeah.
And, that's great. Again, at the combine, he played against a bunch of dudes that are not going to be in the NBA.
Right.
He had 2 good days. You have 2 years worth of tape or a year's worth of tape on the dude. And you know what? He just proved he's not good enough. And yet you see it happen every single year. It's remarkable to me.
Coach, what do you think about this trend now? We've talked about LaMelo Ball, RJ Hampton, got the young prospects going overseas and potentially now into the G League. What is that going to do to college basketball?
It's not for everyone. The G League Academy, look, college is not for everyone. Not everyone wants to go to college. I understand that. I have a concern for the G League Academy because this is what, to me, is a concern. We talk about what's going on in society. Well, what the greatest way to change society is education. And we have all these kids that think that, oh, you know what? I'm going to go to the league. I'm going to go. The NBA is an exclusive club. It's the most exclusive club maybe in all of sport. And yet we have a mentality and a mindset where everyone thinks they're going to go to the league, like it's a rite of passage. And you're going to see high school age kids say, you know what, I'm not going to finish up my senior year of high school. I'm going to the academy. All right. And you know what? they'll get a couple bucks, and you know what? They might get 250,000. 250,000 after taxes, what? 175. Then they got to move. Then they got to pay for their housing. Then they got to pay for the meals. Then they got to buy a car. They got to do different things. And then a year from then, what if they're not NBA players, which a lot of them won't be? Now, where do they go back to? Where do they go back to? And the NBA can say that, there's an academic component. That sounds great. It's not mandatory. There's an academic component. If you don't make it mandatory, it's really hard to see. One of the great disservices that people don't understand is that how hard college coaches work to make sure their guys do the right things academically. The one thing, if a kid's a one and done or a two and done, he can always go back to that school and earn his degree on scholarship. If a kid's a one and done and two, he belongs to something. He's part of a group. And John, you've seen it. I mean, so the academy concerns me. I think this is a trend, whether it's going overseas, it's for a select few. And for a select few, if that's the way it is, so be it. But if it becomes a point where guys are doing it just to do it, you're going to see a lot of really lives ruined. And that's the thing that hurts me, because coaches really are concerned. Yeah, you get paid to win games. The biggest issues I ever had with a player were over academics when I coached. And that's in 36 years of coaching. And I'm sure Coach Bayham, the same thing, that he would get like all whacked out if a guy would just do the right thing, get to class, meet with your tutors, do your assignments, just do the right thing. And those are the areas where people don't understand. Coaches are really committed to helping their guys, what I call change their station in life.
All right, Coach. Hey, it's so great to have you on. Thanks so much for joining us, and stay well. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks for having me. You guys stay well. Be careful.
Thanks, Coach.
All right.
Thanks,
Up
guys.
next, Artemi Panarin of the Rangers, a finalist for the NHL's MVP award. So where does he rank in terms of best free agent signings by a New York team? We'll discuss next on the MSG 150 at Home, presented by Chase.